then you will respond in characteristic ways to given out inputs. Yeah, everybody knows that. Yep. So, oh, right, okay. Okay. Right. Okay, but now it's easy, right? Pain has a characteristic function. Yes?
So the first box, that's the input, and then pain, like, that's what comes from the input?
Yeah, I put this pretty clumsily. Pain is a state you go into, right? Then once you're in that state, there will be characteristic outputs you get for any input. So if you were previously in a non-pain state, yeah, and then you got as input a dividing of the flesh by a knife, yeah, then you would then go into the pain state, yeah, and you'd get as output yelling and so on. Yep, yeah. So it is a state you go into as a consequence of what happened earlier. And then once you're in the pain state, that will make a difference to how you respond to other kinds of input, like if you're offered aspirin, say. Yep. Does that make sense? Yep.
Can you go into multiple states at once from one input?
Yes. No reason why not. I mean, this is obviously simplifying things right down, yeah. But that kind of structure could be mimicked all over the whole system, yeah. And you can do this at different levels of grain too. So the idea that pain has a functional role, that's all right. Yes, we're 100% on board with that? Okay. So we characterize all these inputs and outputs, what intermediate states you go into. And then we say, that's all pain is. Well, there you are. That was easy. Yes? Aha, yes, right. Up until this point, right, you could say, okay, there's the sensation, right? That has the functional role. The hard thing, now follow me like a leopard. Follow me very closely here. There's a sensation, and the idea that I guess everybody is happy with at this point is the sensation has a functional role, right? But now the question is, what is it to have that sensation? That's the fundamental question we're addressing, right? What is it to have that sensation? And the answer is, there is no more to having that sensation than being in a state with this functional role. So it's like you start out with the idea of the sensation, build around the thing of the functional role, and then I say, and now when I tell you what the functional role is, there is nothing left to say about what the sensation intrinsically is. There is no such thing as what the sensation intrinsically is. There is only the functional role. Now, that maybe makes most sense. If I can just stick with this example of being grumpy, when we were having that bit of dialogue about the Spartans and grumpiness, if you start out thinking of grumpiness as a sensation, then you can do this kind of picture. And then I say, but look, if you got that functional role, that's all it is to be grumpy. And if you took away this functional role, which is what happened in the case of the Super Spartans, there wouldn't be any vestige of grumpiness left. The mood would have disappeared. So there is no more to the sensation than this functional role. And the functionalist says that's the general case. That's true of every psychological state. Okay? So it's just like this picture where the sensation has the functional role, except we drop out that bit and say the functional role just is the sensation. Being in a state with that functional role just is having the sensation. Now, you haven't really understood this unless you have that reaction like, hey, where did the sensation go? You see what I mean? You haven't really understood it unless you have that reaction. But first of all, you're likely to have that reaction to any attempt to identify what a psychological state is. Yeah, it's not like any rival view is going to do any better than that. And you see the motive for thinking of it like this. That's the only way you're going to make sense of the identity at all. Okay? Put up your hand if you see what functionalism is. Hey, result. Right. And if you think it can't possibly be true. Okay, I think that's quite a healthy reaction. Okay, good. Okay, well, here's Bloch. Here's Bloch giving his killer argument against functionalism, which is really just a way of trying to articulate that that can't be right. That where did the sensation go kind of reaction. Bloch was writing, I guess this is from the early 70s. I think the perception of China then must have been a little bit different to the perception of China now. Suppose we convert the government of China to functionalism. I don't know what he's thinking. But anyway, suppose we convert the government of China to functionalism and convince its officials that it would enormously enhance their international prestige to realize a human mind for an hour. I don't know. I mean, when you ask people what was going on in the early 70s, you usually get something about there were a lot of drugs around then or something. But anyway, suppose we do that. Okay, you convince them that we're going to realize a human mind for an hour. So then what you do is provide each of all these people in China with a specially designed two-way radio that connects them in the right way to other people and to an artificial body. So each person in this scenario is going to have a very simple book of rules to follow. So imagine you're the person realizing S1. So you're told, okay, if you're, actually when I said S1, let's make it S4. If you're in S4, the current state is S4, and you get the Y input. You just get Y coming in. You just get a Y coming in from someone else. Then what you do is you change the current state to S5, and you output L. Right? So that everyone's got a simple task like that. You're in S4, you get Y coming in, and then you output L. You could do that, right? And you just get a billion people all doing that kind of stuff. That's all right so far? Okay. Well, that system could be functionally identical to you. Suppose that each person there is mimicking one of your neurons, responding in the way that one of your neurons does to input signals from other neurons, outputting to other neurons the way that your neuron outputs to other neurons. Well, that whole system there could be just like you functionally. Yes? I mean, however complex your functional organization is, just get enough people in to mimic your functional organization. But does that whole system have thoughts, feelings, sensations? That seems absolutely crazy. Yeah, of course it doesn't. I mean, people sometimes say, look, the Apple Corporation is deeply hurt by these allegations or something like that. But, you know, the Apple Corporation doesn't really feel pain. I mean, no, it doesn't feel pain. Not the way a human does. That whole thing there can't be having sensations. There can't be raw feels, immediate phenomenological properties, the pangs and itches, the throbs. That whole thing can't be having any of that. So it's got the same functional organization as you, but it doesn't feel pain at all. Yep. Therefore, functionalism must be false. Because that's got the right kind of box and arrow structure. It's got exactly the same box and arrow structure as you. But it doesn't have any psychological life. So pain can't be. This is a very simple argument, but it articulates that feeling. The sensation's just vanished from functionalism. Yeah? So that's that. We can end it there. Goodbye, functionalism. Yes? Is that completely convincing? You see what the argument is? Yeah? Okay. Actually, a student in this class a couple of years ago gave the best response I know to that argument. She said a functionalist can easily resist that. I'll come on to that in a second. But just to get the abstract structure here, we were saying this is the functional structure of pain, right? And the problem is that if you call this organization with 1 billion people in it, maybe hooked up to a robot, if you call that Blockhead, after its inventor, Block, yeah, then Blockhead has got the same functional structure as you, but doesn't feel pain. So the thing about variable realizability was this was going to explain how it could be that you can feel pain and an octopus can feel pain. Because talking about pain is a very abstract way of describing something physical. It describes it at this level of functional organization, so you can have different realizers. But the thing is that although this lets in the octopus as well as you, because you and the octopus can have the same functional structure, and so you can both count as having pain, it also lets in the whole population of China here. But on the other hand, there are kind of thought experiments that go the other way. This is one by the English philosopher Arnold Zuboff, who said, well, okay, you're used to the idea of a prosthetic limb, right? If you lost a toe and they said we can make a perfect metal replacement that works just as well, that would be great, right? If they said parts of your brain are wearing out, but our technology is now such that half a dozen key cells that you're losing, we can replace them with electronic gadgetry. That would be great, right? Would you go for that? We could replace this bit of your brain with some electrical set of transistors that do just the same work. You'd be crazy not to go for that. Yeah? And whatever you kind of feelings you had before, you'd have just the same once that bit of your brain had been replaced by electronic gadgetry. But all the electronic gadgetry has in common with your actual brain is its functional structure. It is wired up in the same way to all the other cells in your brain as the original cells were. That's all it can be, right? It's not made of the same stuff or anything. It doesn't have any kind of ghostly characteristics. It's just got the same functional structure as your brain cells. Well, now imagine that as the years go on, this keeps happening. You lose more and more brain cells. The technology keeps advancing. They keep saying, we can fill in more and more of this. Eventually you wind up with an entirely electronic brain that is functionally just like the original brain. It's going to feel to you just like it did at the start. Here's an objection a student gave just a couple of years ago here, which I think is devastating.